Okay, so a couple of days ago, or a couple of days ago, it's almost a week ago now, the Philadelphia Fusion announced that they would be taking up home in Asia, more specifically Seoul, Korea, for the 2021 season of the Overwatch League. Now, we know that the 2021 season of the Overwatch League will be very much like the previous one, because there was an announcement from John Spector, and he said it was going to be divided up into divisions, much like what we've seen in 2020. So, this then inevitably leads to the speculation on how those divisions will look when it comes to 2021. Will we see people moving from different regions to different regions, or will it stay pretty much the same? And I thought it would be a pretty cool video for me to give you an idea of what I think should happen and what I think will happen. Two different things though. So, let's start off with what I think North America could look like next year. So, I have actually put 12 teams in North America. That is actually down one from what we saw last season. I divided this into 12 and 8. So, again, this is what I think might happen. I would like to see a straight split of 10 and 10. But we can't have any guarantees on that. It depends on what the teams want to do. And the teams have a lot of control in the league. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens. It could also go completely the other way, and there'll be a lot more in North America than there are in APAC, and then that becomes a different thing, because we did see rumours a little while back where APAC could be joined by some of the top Korean contenders teams as a sort of extra buffer in some respects if APAC was too small. Anyway, in NA, I've started off with the Shock. I don't think the Shock are going anywhere. I'd be surprised to see the Shock go to APAC, although they did go obviously to APAC for the Grand Finals. There is a possibility that the Shock go to APAC, but I think they will see the opportunity to dominate the North American region, with Philadelphia now out of the picture. Also, Paris falling down the ranks due to their squad changing. It means there's going to be a new shake-up in North America, and San Francisco Shock probably look at that and say, yeah, let's dominate that region, let's make sure we make ourselves top of the standings, which is entirely possible looking at this San Francisco Shock side. So, who do I think is going to join them now? I think almost certainly we will see the Gladiators join them. Gladiators is a mixed roster. It is half and half with Korean and Western influence. Gladiators competed in North America last year. They should all be sat up. I do not expect that to be changing. I would be very surprised if the Gladiators had any inkling of moving over to Asia. Also, the same can be said for the Valiant. The Valiant is also a mixed roster, and they were perfectly fine in Los Angeles, and I think they will also be staying in North America. I don't expect any of the LA teams to be moving anywhere, which would be good for you guys in terms of times, because obviously the times in which those matches take place was a bit of a nightmare. If your team was actually an American team, but in APAC, it can be pretty frustrating. So, what do we think of the other teams then? Florida Mayhem. Florida Mayhem is all Korean, but it was last season. So I'm not expecting Florida Mayhem to change too much. Plus, not a lot of their squad has changed massively. So I'm expecting Florida Mayhem to actually stay put. Also, they are bringing in OG, who is an American-based main tank, even though he's Korean. He was on the Gladiators last year. So it all kind of adds up that there's not too much in terms of logistical issues for Florida Mayhem. I'd expect them to stay exactly where they are. Also, when you look at other teams that are making moves, two of these teams I'm now going to bring into the conversation are Washington and Toronto. So, those two teams, although they are going very much majority Korean, I still think they will stick around in the North American region. Washington, I think, will want to stay in the American region just for rep purposes. They are Washington, obviously. And then Toronto, I think honestly both of the Canadian teams will be staying. I'd be very surprised to see any of them moved. Although, that's not to say that I wouldn't like to see them moved. I think Florida and also maybe Washington would be quite nice to see in the Asian region to balance it out 10 and 10. So that's the two teams I'd move, Florida and Washington, to the APAC region if I could, because then it would balance it out 10 and 10 with what I would say. But it's not what I think will happen, that's what I want to happen. It's two different things. So, then we have the teams that are much more easy to basically think out. Boston, highly unlikely they're going to move. It would be a stupid decision for Boston to move to APAC, especially with the stacked rosters that are going to be in that region, I think. Then, they are moving to a more Korean-based lineup, and they have Laurie as head coach. So there are arguments for Boston to go that way, but I really don't think that's going to happen. I really don't think that's going to happen. Then we see the other teams that have mixed rosters or all Western rosters. So these guys, again, we are not expecting to go anywhere. This is Atlanta Reign. Atlanta Reign, nah. It would be so surprising if they did. Houston Outlaws, don't expect that. Don't expect that either. Vancouver Titans, that would be a meme if Vancouver Titans went to the APAC region after what happened with the runaway roster. I'll get there in a minute. Then we have the two European teams. Paris, no. Just no. They have got so many financial difficulties. If they went to APAC with all that logistical issue and cost, that would just be unbelievable. So no. And then London. London, I would be astonished if they stayed in APAC because of their move to an all-Western roster and their idea that they want to now serve the European/Western scene. They want to become closer to the fans and everything like that. I'd be very surprised if they stayed in APAC. I anticipate London to be moving back to North America to compete in that region, which will be super duper interesting, and I think it's a good move for that roster actually. I think they will find much more success than they will in APAC. So, that rounds us out for North America, so now you can kind of gather who I've put in the APAC region. Obviously, we're maintaining the teams that were already there. Shanghai, Seoul, Hangzhou, New York, Guangzhou, and Chengdu. Obviously, I would have no reason to put Shanghai, Seoul, Hangzhou, Guangzhou, or Chengdu in the North American region because, well, they're all Asian teams. So it would be a little bit odd if they were to abandon their fan base. So we can pretty much cross them off the list. Now we look at the other teams. We have confirmed that Philadelphia Fusion are going to be competing in that region, so we don't basically need to worry about them. That's not an issue. That leaves two teams that I haven't mentioned so far. New York Excelsior is the first one. New York Excelsior, I believe, will stay in the Korean region or the Asian region, simply because when you look at the beginnings of their roster, their tank line is heavily Korean, obviously with Yakpong and Bianca, and obviously they still have Jonak. So I have no reason to believe that New York Excelsior will be switching anything up. Therefore, I would expect them to stay in the Korean region. Now, the very big, obvious one that I've left out here is Dallas. So, Dallas, their roster would scream that they could go to Korea. However, this is Dallas, and so they could well stay in NA. I am very unsure about this one. I would like to see them go and test themselves in Korea. Again, the Dallas Fuel org, Envious, has a history of going to Korea and testing themselves, so I think it would be really cool to see, almost a hark back to the old days of Envious, to see Dallas go and challenge themselves in the Asian region, which will most likely be the most competitive region. And when you look at the teams in there, it looks like it's going to be really, really, really competitive in that region. I think Dallas is a good team, and so I would like to see them challenge themselves in the APAC region. However, it is the caveat that if we do get Dallas in the APAC region, I do not think we will see a Texas derby. So that is another option that kind of falls by the wayside. Now, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I don't think people were expecting Philadelphia to move over to the APAC region. So I think a lot of people expected Philadelphia and Dallas to move over and there'd be 6 in APAC, which means it would be very small. However, that isn't the case now. I would love to see the two regions divided up and made pretty even. Whether that's 10 and 10, which would be the ideal scenario, or whether that's 12 and 8, something like that. I'd love to see them fairly even. It will be interesting to see if that's what we get. But this is what I think. This is not obviously confirmed or anything, apart from the Philadelphia one. This is what I think and I would like to see. I'd love to know what you guys think, because we're clearly going to be getting 2 regions. There's probably going to be APAC and NA again. And so I'd love to see what you guys would think and what you'd like to see the split be. And how would you deal with a split if APAC is really small? That's what I'd like to see as well, because we have obviously seen those rumours that some contenders teams from Korea could get involved as well to bumper that region up. Very interesting times. We will wait to see on these announcements when and if they are made closer to the time of the start of the season, but I am going to leave it here for this one. Check out Illusion Gaming as ever, check out the Discord server as ever, check out Twitter We've just hit 100 followers on Twitter, so thank you very, very much for that. And yeah, check out everything. It's all in the description below. Hit bell because then you get notified of these videos. Thank you very much. But for now, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you'd like to give a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then.